No one survives this. They attacked your harmlessness, but you just obliterated the whole group. There was a time when people looked at you and made a decision about who you were before they ever took the time to know you. They saw your kindness and mistook it for weakness. They saw your patience and assumed you would never push back. They saw the way you chose peace over conflict and quietly convinced themselves that you had no strength hiding beneath the surface. What they never understood is that some of the strongest people in the world do not announce their power. They do not compete for attention. They do not spend every day proving themselves. They simply continue walking forward, carrying burdens nobody sees, growing in silence while others remain distracted by appearances. If this feels strangely familiar, stay with this, because there is something deeper happening here than most people realize. The truth is, the moment people underestimate someone who has been growing quietly, they create a misunderstanding that eventually reveals itself. Not through arguments, not through revenge, not through loud victories. It happens when reality finally catches up with their assumptions. While they were busy creating stories about you, you were becoming someone new. Every disappointment taught you something. Every setback sharpened your awareness. Every moment you spent feeling overlooked forced you to develop parts of yourself that would never have existed otherwise. What looked like stillness from the outside was actually transformation. What looked like silence was preparation. And what looked like harmlessness was a depth they never bothered to explore. Perhaps the most surprising part is that you did not set out to prove anyone wrong. You were not focused on winning some invisible competition. You were simply trying to survive your own challenges, heal your own wounds, and understand your own path. Yet something remarkable happens when a person commits to that journey. The energy they once spent defending themselves becomes energy used for growth. The attention they once gave to criticism becomes attention given to purpose. Little by little, they become impossible to define by old labels. The people who thought they knew them begin noticing changes they cannot explain. They sense a difference, but they do not fully understand where it came from. And now many of those same people find themselves looking at you differently. Not because you changed your heart, but because your quiet consistency revealed something they missed from the beginning. They expected you to remain exactly where they left you in their minds. Instead, they discovered someone who kept evolving when nobody was watching. Someone whose calm nature was never a limitation. Someone whose gentleness existed alongside incredible resilience. Don't miss what comes next, because the story is not really about what happened to them. It is about what happened inside you, and why that inner change is becoming impossible for the world around you to ignore. What makes this story so powerful is that the biggest shift did not happen in public. It happened during moments nobody applauded. It happened during the nights when you questioned yourself, during the mornings when motivation felt distant, and during the ordinary days when it seemed like nothing was changing at all. From the outside, your life may have looked the same, but inside, something was quietly rearranging itself. You were learning how to trust your own voice instead of waiting for approval. You were learning how to stand in your truth without explaining every decision. Most importantly, you were learning that your value was never dependent on whether other people recognized it. That realization changed everything, even before anyone else noticed. There is a strange moment that often arrives after a period of silent growth. One day, the people who once overlooked you begin paying attention. The same qualities they dismissed suddenly become impossible to ignore. Your calmness becomes wisdom. Your patience becomes strength. Your thoughtful nature becomes influence. It is not because those qualities are new, they were always there. The difference is that time has a way of revealing what appearances hide. People eventually notice patterns, they notice consistency, they notice character. And when they do, many of their old assumptions begin falling apart on their own. There is something important here. The recognition you receive now is not coming from performance. It is coming from authenticity. What many never understood is that you were never trying to become someone else. While others were chasing attention, you were learning lessons. While others were focused on appearances, you were building depth. While others measured success through immediate results, you were developing qualities that grow stronger with time. This is why your progress feels different. It is rooted in something real. The confidence you carry now is not borrowed from praise. It comes from experience. It comes from surviving difficult chapters and discovering that you are far more capable than you once believed. That kind of confidence cannot be taken away because it was earned through living, learning, and continuing forward. And now there is a growing awareness around you that something has changed. People may not always have the right words for it, but they can feel it. They sense a steadiness that was not visible before. They notice that you no longer react to every opinion, every judgment, or every misunderstanding. There is a quiet certainty in you now, a grounded presence. It is the kind of transformation that happens when someone stops fighting to be understood and starts focusing on becoming who they were meant to be. Stay with this, because the next part reveals why that quiet certainty has created a reaction nobody expected, including the people who once believed they had you completely figured out. Sometimes the most surprising thing about personal growth is not the growth itself, but the reaction it creates in people who thought they understood your limits. They become confused because the version of you they carried in their minds no longer matches the person standing before them. They remember someone who doubted themselves more often, someone who carried the weight of other people's opinions, someone who hesitated before taking up space. Yet now they see a different presence, not louder, not arrogant, just more certain, more grounded, more connected to who you truly are. And that difference has a way of changing every interaction without a single word needing to be spoken. Many people expect strength to look dramatic. They imagine bold declarations, public victories, or moments that demand attention. But the strongest transformation often looks surprisingly simple. It appears in the way you protect your peace. It appears in the way you choose your energy carefully. It appears in the way you stop chasing validation from people who were never prepared to give it. These changes may seem small from a distance, but together they create a completely different life. The person who once searched for permission begins trusting their own judgment. The person who once felt invisible begins recognizing their own worth. Little by little, an entirely new chapter begins unfolding from choices that seem almost ordinary on the surface. What is fascinating is that this transformation often reveals more about others than it does about you. When people see someone growing beyond the role they assign to them, they are forced to confront their own assumptions. They start questioning the stories they created. They wonder how they missed what was there all along. Some feel admiration. Some feel surprise. Some feel inspired to reflect on their own lives. The response varies from person to person, but one thing remains constant. Genuine growth cannot stay hidden forever. Like a light gradually brightening a room, it eventually becomes visible to everyone who enters the space. There is something important here. The impact you are having reaches farther than you realize, and perhaps the most beautiful part of this journey is that your transformation was never really about proving anyone wrong. It was about finally becoming honest with yourself. It was about releasing the need to shrink, apologize for your dreams, or carry expectations that never belonged to you. That inner freedom creates a presence that people notice immediately, even if they cannot explain why. They sense that you are no longer waiting for life to begin. You are living it. They sense that you are no longer measuring yourself through old definitions. You are creating new ones. And in the next part, you will see why that shift is causing a ripple effect that extends far beyond your own story, touching people in ways you may not even be aware of yet. There comes a moment in every meaningful journey when you begin to realize that your story was never yours alone. The lessons you learned in silence, the resilience you built during uncertain seasons, and the strength you discovered when nobody was watching, all start creating an effect beyond your own life. People observe you more than you think. They notice how you carry yourself through challenges. They notice how you remain kind without becoming fragile. They notice how you continue moving forward without needing constant recognition. What once seemed like a private transformation begins influencing others in quiet ways. Someone finds courage because they watched you keep going. Someone begins believing in themselves because they witnessed your growth. Without even trying, you become evidence that change is possible. The interesting thing is that many of the people who once underestimated you are now paying the closest attention. Not because they suddenly became your critics or your supporters, but because they are trying to understand what happened. They expected your story to follow a familiar path. They thought they had already figured out how your future would unfold. Yet life rarely follows the expectations people create for others. Human beings are capable of remarkable evolution when they commit to their own growth. The version of you they assumed would remain unchanged no longer exists. In its place stands someone wiser, calmer, and more self-aware. That realization can be surprising for those who only saw a small piece of who you truly were. What makes this chapter different is that your confidence no longer depends on circumstances. In the past, A setback might have shaken your belief in yourself. A misunderstanding might have stayed in your mind for days. A negative opinion might have felt heavier than it should have. But something shifted along the way. You began understanding that your identity cannot be defined by temporary situations. You started recognizing that growth is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming authentic. The more you embraced that truth, the less power outside voices held over your decisions. A quiet sense of freedom emerged, and with it came a level of peace that cannot be manufactured or borrowed from anyone else. And now you stand in a place that once seemed far away, not at the end of the journey, but at the beginning of a new understanding. You are seeing how every difficult season contributed to your development. You are recognizing how every challenge carried a lesson hidden within it. Most importantly, you are beginning to understand that what appeared to be harmlessness was actually one of your greatest strengths. Beneath your calm nature was endurance. Beneath your patience was determination. Beneath your kindness was an unshakable spirit. Stay with this, because the next chapter uncovers the realization that changes everything. The moment you stop seeing your past struggles as obstacles and start seeing them as the foundation of the person you have become. One of the deepest realizations a person can have is understanding that the very experiences they once wished had never happened were shaping them for something greater all along. Looking back now, you may see moments that felt unfair, confusing, or deeply disappointing. At the time, those chapters seemed like obstacles standing in your way. Yet from where you stand today, a different picture begins to emerge. Those experiences taught you how to listen to yourself when the world was noisy. They taught you how to remain steady when circumstances were uncertain. They taught you how to keep your heart open without losing your sense of self. What once felt like resistance slowly became preparation, and what once felt like delay quietly became development. There is a unique kind of strength that comes from surviving seasons that nobody fully understands. It is not the strength of someone who has never struggled. It is the strength of someone who has struggled and still chosen hope. It is the strength of someone who has been misunderstood and still chosen kindness. It is the strength of someone who has experienced disappointment and still chosen to believe that life holds meaning. That strength is visible now, even if you do not always recognize it in yourself. Others can feel it when they speak with you. They notice it in your perspective, your patience, and the way you carry yourself. What they are responding to is not perfection. It is authenticity forged through experience. As this awareness grows, something unexpected begins happening. You stop measuring your life against old expectations. The need to prove yourself starts fading into the background. The desire to win every argument or correct every misunderstanding becomes less important. You realize that peace often comes from letting your life speak for itself. The people who truly see you will understand. The people who do not are following a version of you that no longer exists. There is something important here. The freedom you have been searching for does not come from controlling how others perceive you. It comes from becoming comfortable with who you are, regardless of perception. And perhaps this is why the entire story feels so different now. What looked like a group of people defining your limits became the very situation that revealed your growth. What looked like a misunderstanding became a mirror showing how far you had come. Without planning it, without forcing it, and without needing recognition, you stepped beyond the expectations that once surrounded you. The quiet person they underestimated became someone impossible to overlook, not because you demanded attention, but because genuine growth naturally shines through. In the final part, everything comes together as you discover the lasting truth hidden beneath this entire journey. A truth that brings not excitement or drama, but something far more valuable: lasting clarity. The most meaningful endings rarely arrive with noise. They arrive with understanding. After everything you have experienced, after every assumption made about you, every moment of being overlooked, and every season of quiet growth, you begin to see the journey through a different lens. It was never really about changing other people's minds. It was never about proving your worth or winning approval. The deeper purpose was helping you discover what had been inside you from the very beginning. The strength, wisdom, patience, and resilience you now carry were not created by circumstances. They were revealed through them. What others saw as harmlessness was actually a calm confidence waiting to be recognized, first by you, and then by everyone else. When you understand this, something inside you settles. You stop carrying old stories that no longer fit who you are. You stop revisiting moments that once made you question yourself. Instead, You begin appreciating how every chapter contributed to your growth. Even the confusing parts have meaning now. Even the seasons that felt slow have value. Life has a remarkable way of connecting experiences that seem unrelated while they are happening. Looking back, you can see how one lesson prepared you for another, how one challenge strengthened you for the next, and how every step was quietly guiding you toward a deeper understanding of yourself. There is something important here. The person you were becoming was always greater than the situation you were facing. What makes your story powerful is not that you overcame others. It is that you overcame limitations you once placed on yourself. You moved beyond doubt. You moved beyond the need for constant validation. You moved beyond the belief that being kind meant being weak. In doing so, you discovered a balance that many people spend years searching for. You learned how to remain compassionate without losing your boundaries. You learned how to remain humble without diminishing your value. You learned how to grow without becoming disconnected from your true nature. That balance is the real achievement. It is the reason your presence feels different now. It is the reason people notice a quiet strength they cannot easily explain. So if there is one message to carry forward from this moment, let it be this. Never underestimate the power of steady growth. The world often celebrates loud transformations, but some of the most extraordinary changes happen in silence. They happen when a person chooses healing over bitterness, understanding over resentment, and purpose over distraction. You have been living that transformation, even on days when it felt invisible. And now, as you look ahead, there is no need to prove anything, no need to chase recognition, no need to become someone else. The truth is already clear. You were never defined by the assumptions placed upon you. You were defined by the person you chose to become. And that realization brings a calm kind of confidence that stays with you long after the noise has faded away.